Greetings. My name is Letitia Hensley, and I'm the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools Director of Family and Community Engagement. We are excited that you are joining us today and know you will gain great insight from this session. At the conclusion of today's session, please provide feedback so that we can continue to support you with amazing sessions that will be provided throughout the year. Now, without further ado, we'll turn it over to our presenters.
Good afternoon, families. Thank you all for joining us for this session entitled Recoloring the Holiday Blues. And today our presenters will be Dr. Vanessa Bowles and myself, Dr. LaTanya Love.
Today, we will be offering translation supports for the session. In the top right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see the Captions button. Please click on the Captions button if you need translation support. Then select Show Live Captions and select the language of your choosing. So Captions, Show Live Captions in the language of your choosing for translation support. We will have engagement today that we are excited to connect with you regarding. In the top right-hand corner next to the Captions button, we have a Q&A button. You will see a Q&A text box up here. Please ask any questions you may have for our presenters. We will do our best to monitor the Q&A and answer all questions at the end of the presentation. Additionally, feel free to react and engage with us using the different reaction options as you see fit.
Again, as I stated, I am Dr. LaTanya Love. I will be one of your presenters today. I am the Mental Health Program Manager for Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools.
And I will be your second presenter, Dr. Vanessa Bowles. I'm one of the Directors of Student Wellness and Academic Support for Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools.
During our presentation today, we will have a few objectives. First, we would like to review key data points from the APA 2023 Holiday Stress Survey. Second, we would like to develop a deeper understanding of the primary causes of stress during the holiday season. Third, we would like to differentiate between clinical depression versus holiday blues. And lastly, we hope that you will be able to identify coping strategies to manage emotional and financial stress. Here are the norms for our meeting today. We ask that you are respectful of all of our participants as they are sharing their perspectives and engaging with us today. We want to be welcoming and inclusive of all parties who are joining us. Second, we would love your engagement and to interact with us. We like for you to react using the various emojis that were reviewed earlier. And to ask a question, you can simply raise your hand or place a question in the Q&A. Last, for most of the presentation, we would ask that you keep your microphone muted. That would better help us to manage our sound for today's presentation. And we're just going to jump right in. So just in in 2023, APA, the Psychological Association, conducted a holiday stress survey whereby they looked at and polled 2,000 Americans to determine their level of stress during the holiday season from November to January. And what they found out of those 2,000 respondents was that most people reported being joyous during the holiday season, but quite overwhelmed. And I'm sure some of us can attest to that. The data indicates that 89% of those respondents reported stress during the holiday. So that's approximately 9 out of 10 people reported stress during the holiday season. And out of those 2,000 respondents, about 49% acknowledged a moderate amount of stress from November to January. And one other point that we would like to go over is that 43% indicated that holiday stress impacted their ability to enjoy the holidays. So, although they found the holiday season quite enjoyable, they did indicate that stress impacted really their ability to enjoy family and friends during that time. So, let's think about what are some of the primary stressors that we are unfortunately dealing with during the holiday season. And if you want to, you can put this in the Q&A area. So think about yourselves before we go over the results from the APA 2023 survey. What kinds of things bring you stress during this season? We know that all of us have different traditions during the holiday season. We have different ideas about what that season should look like. So, if you think about you and your respective families, can anyone identify a couple of things that bring them stress during the holiday season? And we just ask that our moderators please share out anything that's dropped in the Q&A. Molly, would you like to share any comments that were dropped in the Q&A regarding our participants and their things that bring them stress during this time?
They might still be typing if you want to continue through the presentation. I'll let you know if any are added.
Okay, thank you. So when we look at the APA 2023 study, they found that there are 10 common stressors that people typically report. So the greatest thing that can bring us stress during this time is spending too much or not having enough money to spend. 58% of respondents felt like that was their greatest stressor. Next, finding the right gift. About 40% of respondents indicated that that brings them a lot of stress. Missing family members or loved ones, that was shown to be at 38% of respondents. Having too much to do during this time, 32%. And feeling pressure to make the holiday special, about 30% of respondents indicated that as a common stressor. Next slide, please.
And we did have some of our participants share that finances and missing loved ones or some of the stressors they did experience as well.
Exactly. So what you all have experienced and are experiencing, it is in line with what a lot of Americans are experiencing today, that financial strain and stressors, in addition to missing those family members who may have passed or aren't able to attend your family events. So that can certainly bring you a level of stress. Next, we want to look at food or alcohol related issues. About 25% of respondents indicated that that was a level of stress for them. Not being able to spend time with or be with family or loved ones, as you all indicated, 25% of the respondents noted that as a common stressor. Experiencing or anticipating family conflict. Wow. We know that 2024 has been a tough year, especially for us in this part of the world. We had a pretty contentious election going on and all sorts of things. We're recovering from the effects of a hurricane. So some of those things can also add to family conflict. So about 22% of respondents indicated that that was a stressor. Feeling left out or excluded. Wow. 20% of respondents indicated that that can cause them a level of stress. So it makes me think about those family members who may be single without a partner or newly divorced, going through a significant life transition. So we need to be mindful that 20% of respondents reported feeling left out or excluded as a primary stressor for them. And lastly, we see it on the news all the time when they're highlighting the traffic at the various airports, and AAA always talks to us about road safety, but travel can be a significant stressor for a number of people, and that was reported with about 19% of the respondents. So now we want to take just a few minutes to have an engagement point with you all, and we want you to think about those kinds of things that may bring you stress during the holiday season. And to do that, I am going to ask you to respond to some statements. And to each statement, you're going to have a response of true or false. And if you respond false to these statements, and you can just do this on your own, you would give yourself 1 point. Next slide, please. You're going to give yourself 1 point for each statement that is false for you. You don't give yourself any points for true, but we're going to focus on those statements that are false for you. And so I will read out the statements. And so you just think about for yourself if the statement is true or false. Again, you're going to give yourself 1 point for each false statement. So let's start. First, I look forward to the holidays with genuine pleasure most of the time. Is that true for you or false for you? And if that is false, give yourself a point. I know how to set a budget for holiday gifts and stick with it. If that's true for you, you would indicate true. If it's false, you're going to give yourself a point. Holiday shopping and spending a lot of money on my family and friends are not the most important part of this season. If that is false for you, give yourself a point. I am able to be very realistic about what to expect from myself over the holidays. If that's false for you, give yourself a point. I am very realistic of what I can expect from others over the holidays. Again, if it's false, give yourself a point. I have a partner to celebrate the holidays with me. Next statement. My partner and I work well as a team most of the time. If that is true for you, you wouldn't give yourself a point, but if it's false, give yourself a point. I have family that I enjoy spending time with over the holidays. False. If it is, give yourself a point. I have close friends that I enjoy spending time with over the holidays. Last statement on this screen. I am able to schedule downtime for myself on a regular basis. If that statement is false for you, give yourself a point. A few more statements to go through. I take part in some comforting and pleasant holiday rituals and look forward to them every year. If that's false, give yourself a point. I know healthy ways to cope if I start to feel overwhelmed. Last two here. I am not overly scheduled and have a pretty good balance of work, fun, and relaxation. If that's false for you, give yourself a point. Very important statement here. I eat healthily, drink alcohol moderately or not at all, and get 30 minutes of aerobic exercise daily. If that is true for you, congratulations, you are doing very well. If that's false for you, give yourself a point. So in our last section here, if we encounter a statement that is false for us, we're going to give ourselves 2 points. The first statement, I have not had any major losses over the last 2 years. If that's false for you, give yourself 2 points. I have enough money to cover my basic needs. If that's false for you, give yourself 2 points. And these are our last two statements. I had a reasonably happy childhood with fond memories of the holidays. If that's false, give yourself 2 points. Last statement, I am never affected by the holiday blues. If that's false for you, give yourself 2 points. Now, in considering all of the statements, if you'll go back to the previous slide, please. If in considering all of the statements that we've gone over today, I want you to understand that these aren't diagnostic in nature, which means that based on a particular score, I have this diagnosis versus that diagnosis. That's not the intent of these statements. The intent here is to give us some idea of the level of stress that we may be encountering, our risk of burnout during this holiday season, and if we may need to put in some activities to help us cope with stress during this holiday season. So again, this is not diagnostic in nature, but it's a good way for us to think about where we are right now and giving ourselves an individual pulse check, and if there's anything we need to do to build in more support. So if you have just a few points, if you read through these statements with me and you gave yourself just a few points, then your stress level is about average. 1 to 2 points is about average for most people. If in going through these statements, you realize you had a number of false statements, which gave you about 5 or more points, then we may want to pause and think about those things that are bringing us stress. And we may want to check in with someone to build a support plan and system around those key stressors that we are currently dealing with. And the biggest takeaway that I want you to have today is to know that stress is inevitable. We all are going to deal with a certain level of stress daily throughout the year, but we want to build in a plan to better manage our stress, especially if we find out in responding to these statements that we don't have as much support as we feel like we need. We're not enjoying the holidays as much as we used to. You're still dealing with some grief from the loss of a loved one. Then those things let us know that we may need to do some self-care and to check in with someone about the stress that we're going through. And at this time, I'll pause to see if there are any questions before we move on to the next section.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to spend with us just a little bit to talk about how we're going to recolor the holiday blues. I hope you got what we were saying with the title. We're going to recolor what can be considered the holiday blues. So Dr. Love talked about this test that she just gave you all and how it's not diagnostic. So you all are blessed that both Dr. Love and I are psychologists, and we can give you some information about what is diagnostic. People like to say, I'm depressed, I'm this, I'm that, and we just kind of wanted to give you an idea of what clinical diagnosable depression is versus what could be considered as holiday stress. So first, I want to put out a disclaimer that depression is a mental health condition. It is a diagnosable condition, and it impacts your ability to carry out your daily functions. A marker of clinical depression is that you're going to not only be sad, but you're going to see impacts of that sadness across your ability to work, your ability to take care of and interact with your family, and sometimes your ability to take care of yourself. So when we use the term clinical depression, when you receive a diagnosis for that, it may be called a major depressive disorder, MDD. And so to have a major depressive disorder, you have to have those symptoms of not just sadness, but some of the other things you see on the screen for a period of 2 weeks. So 2 weeks consecutively where you're feeling this way every day for 2 weeks. There's some individuals who have persistent depressive disorder, which goes on for about 2 years of feeling that mild to moderate sadness. So on the clinical depression side, you see things like severe symptoms that are impacting your functioning. And when I say severe symptoms, some of the symptoms we talk about are feeling hopeless, feeling really sad and pessimistic, like things aren't going to get better. You're feeling a loss of interest in things that you enjoy doing, pleasurable things for you. You don't want to do those anymore. You may see some lack of energy and fatigue. You're kind of laying in bed. You're not getting up. You're not wanting to move. You're not going to want to socialize with people. And sometimes even you're going to have thoughts of suicide. Also withdrawing from people and that feeling of sadness and hopelessness for 2 weeks or more. So symptoms that present that way may lean more towards a clinical diagnosis. So holiday stress or any stress is generally in response to an external cause. So for example, the holidays coming up and all of the things that were listed is usually the cause of holiday stress. I have to do all this shopping. I don't have any money. My family's coming into town. I don't know what to do. I have to travel. So there's an external cause for this stress. And then your body has a physical and or mental response. Usually holiday stress is going to resolve itself as life changes. So if it's holiday stress, once we get over the hump of the holidays, those symptoms should subside if we're dealing with holiday stress. But there are some symptoms that may be similar. If you're stressed, you will have difficulty concentrating or falling asleep. You're ruminating over what needs to be done and what is stressful for you. You may have headaches or body aches. With both clinical depression and holiday stress, you may find yourself being irritable or angry. Everything is kind of getting on your nerves. You're snapping at people. There are changes in your eating and sleeping patterns. And that means you may be eating more or eating less, or you're sleeping too much, or you can't fall asleep. You also may have lack of energy, just kind of feeling not feeling like doing anything, or feelings of sadness occur with both of them. So I really want you to take away from this is if these symptoms are not significantly impacting your ability to function, you're probably experiencing stress as it relates to the holidays. And we want to talk about some coping strategies that we can use to help you move past those feelings of stress. I'm not at all minimizing them, but I don't want you to walk away thinking you're depressed and I need to do this or that if your symptoms are in response to the holidays coming up. Next slide, please. So this slide has a picture of a snowman, and it made me think about if we don't manage our feelings, they kind of snowball, and they can look like those pieces of the snowman, his head, his body, and his bottom, if we just let these feelings grow. And I put a word cloud down in the bottom of what are some things that we can do to help manage our feelings. So you'll see words in there that Dr. Love has also touched on: self-care, budgeting, seeking support, volunteering. So I want you to remember this visual and making sure that as the holidays come, we don't want to allow the stress that we're feeling to snowball into Frosty the Snowman, and then we have a whole bunch on our hands. Next slide, please. So emotionally, there are some ways that we can cope with the emotional stress that we feel as it's connected to the holidays. In some of the responses from the national survey that was done, talking it out may be helpful for people. So finding someone who has a listening ear to help you talk through your feelings. I'm reading a book, and the author of the book says that when it comes to our feelings and grief, we don't want to ignore our feelings, but we also don't want to feed that beast either. So you don't want to completely ignore the fact that you're stressed or you're sad or you're worried. So you need to get those feelings out and find someone to talk to. It could be a friend, it could be a pastor, or it could be a mental health therapist. I also find it very helpful to declare gratitude. And that is where you just talk about things that you are grateful for. There are a lot of things that are going wrong and that you don't have, but there are also a lot of things that you can declare gratitude for. So you can be grateful that while I may not have the money to do all the things I want to do, I'm grateful that I have a home. I'm grateful that I have a warm place to sleep at night. I'm grateful that I have family that calls and checks on me, or I'm grateful that I'm in good physical health. So finding things all throughout the season that you can declare gratitude for. I also want to encourage you to engage in self-care. And sometimes self-care gets a bad rap. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't mean you got to spend $2,000 flying yourself to the Maldives. Self-care is just engaging in things that bring you joy. For me, self-care sometimes is taking a warm shower and putting one of those little aromatherapy balls in there so that the room just smells really good and it relaxes me. Self-care can be taking a long drive home from work so that you have time to kind of decompose in the car before you go home or to your next activity. But self-care can also be going and treating yourself to a massage or a pedicure. Self-care can be engaging in lunch with a friend that'll get your mind off of things. So making sure that you're doing things that bring you joy during this holiday season. Also, in line with the gratitude, think about volunteering your time. It always feels good when we're able to do something for someone else. And during the holiday season, there are all kinds of opportunities for volunteerism, whether it's in person, going and helping serve somewhere. I remember I used to do Meals on Wheels in my previous state that I lived in, or it can be something me and my daughter have done in the past, the shoe boxes that you can get and you fill them with items and you take them back. I can't remember the name of the place, and they mail them off for you, but you're purchasing things for another child. We have Christmas groups where you can donate to children in the community that may be less fortunate. So finding things to kind of help bring you joy by being able to give of your time or your resources in other areas. And then finally, like I was saying in the beginning, acknowledge if there is grief in the process, acknowledge it. If there's someone who is not here, who was here last year, and that makes you sad, you don't have to pretend like you're not sad. You want to acknowledge whatever the feelings are, but you don't want to continue to feed it, because what we feed grows. We feed our babies, they grow. If we feed our plants, they grow. So we don't want to continue to feed the grief, but we want to acknowledge it and find coping strategies and ways that we can move forward. Also, there's a picture on the side of other things that you can do to try to help manage stress. If you enjoy reading or listening to books online, doing something artistic, managing your time, spending time with friends, those are all great ways to cope emotionally. Next slide, please. And then probably the biggest bear in the room is financial coping. I know that a lot of people, I think it was the number one stressor during the holidays, is just not having enough money to buy everything that our kids want, or our spouses want, or our families want, or even buying things that we want to do for other people. So a coping mechanism for that is to plan and prepare. I tell myself, I know Christmas is coming the same time every year. So plan ahead. Save money to do what it is that you need to do, and don't allow yourself to get down to the last minute and stress out. So as much as you possibly can, plan ahead and prepare for the season that's coming. Create a budget and stick to it. If this is how much you are deciding that you're spending or that you can afford, stick to the budget that you created. And it's definitely another stressor when you're spending money that you don't have and you're putting yourself into debt. So making sure that whatever we're saving and we're going to spend for the holidays, that's exactly what it is. Prioritize, put first things first financially. So what we need to buy first, those are the things that are going to get the priority of our finances, and then other things kind of fall into place. And the last one is probably really difficult for us as parents, but avoid creating unrealistic expectations. You know, our children ask for the world. And if we are not able to do that, we need to make sure that they don't have unrealistic expectations, because then they're upset and then we feel guilty and you know, we're beating ourselves up. But creating those realistic expectations, this is kind of, if you have kids who, you know, are able to understand and comprehend it and what they're asking for, don't let them go too far off, you know, to the left, so that you feel pressured to try to meet those financial burdens that you know that you cannot meet. Do we have any questions in the Q&A? Yeah.
Not at this time, no, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. And so my next slide, please. My next slide was asking if we could share and support each other. If you have anything that you could think of to put in the Q&A, ways that have been helpful for you. So all of us have experienced some kind of holiday stress, sadness, feelings of being overwhelmed. What could you share with the group that are things that have been helpful to you when the holidays come around and we're working on recoloring those holiday blues? I know for myself, from the list that we shared, I really do try to practice gratitude, and I really try to pass that on to my daughter. I try to earnestly have us wake up every day and say one thing that we're thankful for that day, even if it's nothing more than we woke up this morning, because she understands that everyone doesn't wake up the next day. Things happen. So that has really helped me avoid being completely overwhelmed. It's just finding ways to be grateful. So I'll give you a brief moment if there's anything that anyone could share that could possibly help anyone. And you can move to the next slide, which is asking if there are any questions that anyone watching has for myself or Dr. Love, or anything that you would like to drop in the Q&A as a group share that might be beneficial to the group as a whole.
We are seeing that some of our participants are sharing that meditating is really beneficial, being grateful for today, and if necessary, just a good old-fashioned cry.
Yes. I saw a post one day that said, I'm going to be all right. I'm going to cry first, but then I'm going to be okay. So there's nothing wrong with sometimes getting it all out, having a good cry, and then figuring out what we're going to do next. Thank you for sharing that.
We had another participant share that sometimes they go to another family's house just to get that break, get a little time away.
Yes, yes. That's good self-care. Sometimes you need to remove yourself, and that's also a good strategy if you're unable to be close to your own family. Maybe there's a family or a co-worker's family that you can spend the holidays with if you're not able to get to your own family. So that's a really great suggestion too.
We have one question. How do you manage with multiple stressors?
You want to respond, Dr. Love?
I'll let you go first and then we'll tag team.
Okay. Multiple stressors, I would say responding the same way to just one, figuring out what is going to help you overcome. So for example, if multiple stressors could be finances, it could be I'm far away from my family and maybe I don't get the time off of work that I want to, so I'm stressed out about that. So I think that even with all of those multiple stressors, maybe some self-care, some meditating, a universal strategy just to kind of reground yourself, and also kind of being realistic about things. Sometimes we put unrealistic expectations on ourselves. I remember there was a time where I didn't work in education and I would get so mad every year that I had to work during the holidays. But, that was a requirement of the job. You had to work one of the holidays. And so I had to be realistic with myself and say, hey, it's my turn to work. I know that I would love to be with my family, but this is the way that it has to be. And then maybe Zoom with my family or FaceTime with my family to try and take some of that pain off. But any of the coping strategies, I think, are effective, even if they're more than one stressor. What do you say, Dr. Love?
I completely agree with that. And I think just expounding on being realistic, a lot of times when we are dealing with multiple stressors, we can tend to get overwhelmed and we don't know what to tackle first. And so one of the things that I often encourage people to do is to make a list. What is currently stressing you in this moment? And you can do it from the biggest thing that's stressing you to the least. You can rank order them. Then you have to think about what is within my locus of control. What are those things that I can control and manage? Because we have to realize there are only 24 hours a day. And guess what? We're only one person, right? So after I list those things that are stressing me, and I list them from greatest to least. Then I start thinking about the resources that I have and what I can tackle first. What strategy do I need to put into place? So, for example, if it's a financial stressor, I need to think about realistically, how much money do I have? Do I need to decrease my budget this year? One of the things that I did in terms of financial stress a few years back, I realized that I was spending too much money during the holiday season on gifts. Although I don't have any biological children, I have nieces and nephews, right? But I was just spending and buying clothes and toys and a lot of things that they were getting duplicates of on Christmas Day. So, what I did, I set a budget for each child. And so now I spend $50 per child. It's manageable. I have four nephews and a niece. And so that fits nicely within my budget. And I don't feel overwhelmed when I'm going into the store to purchase anything because I know what my budget is, right? Also, something that was stressing me was having enough time with my family members because the holidays can seem very rushed. So, one of the things that I also did, I started scheduling lunches with my mom. I started scheduling time with friends to enjoy over the holidays so that I realized which things were most important and I put those first and I tackled those first because we may not be able to tackle everything, but we have to think about what are those things that I can do and let me focus on those things first. Keep the main thing first, keep first things first. So that's what I would do in terms of handling multiple stressors.
Great information. We've had some comments within the Q&A about how much they've enjoyed the idea of practicing gratitude at this time, extending grace to yourself, and making sure that we are really showing kindness to ourselves. One suggestion that has come across the Q&A is connecting by telling their child about things they used to do with their families and their mothers during the holiday season as well. A suggestion that was shared in the Q&A. I work at United Bank and they offer a special Christmas savings account that offers interest. So it helps to save and get a little bit more interest for the holidays. So maybe discussing with your financial institution if there are certain saving options to support and prepare for those Christmas expenses. Great suggestion. Thank you for sharing that as well. And then a question that we have is how do we feel more connected with others during this holiday time?
I think one way that we can feel more connected is to be intentional in spending our time with those whom we love. Because oftentimes, as I mentioned before, the season can feel so rushed because you are cooking, purchasing groceries, planning your meals, planning your holiday parties, setting up for your holiday parties, doing your guest list. There are a number of things happening in a short amount of time, but you have to be intentional in being connected to those who are closest to us. Because what we realize is that during the holidays, that's what's the most important thing anyway, right? Is having those true connections to family and friends. So I would say schedule it and do something fun because it's about experiences. So one of the things that I started doing as well too, for my nephews and my niece, in addition to their gifts, sometimes I'll spend the $50 on experiences. Maybe we're going to a trampoline park, right? So one, it's your Christmas gift because I'm giving you a ticket to the trampoline park. But guess what? I'm also able to spend time with you because I'm going with you to the trampoline park. So we have to be intentional about setting that time aside with those whom we love and spending that connection time together. Dr. Bowles, what would you like to add?
Think mine was similar to yours, and I was going to say the nature of that question lets me know that you desire that connection, and sometimes we have to initiate it. sometimes our feelings get hurt when in the hustle and bustle, no one's calling me, no one's hanging out. But maybe you have to initiate that. I want to be connected to my best friend or my mom or my sister. Let me reach out and call them. Like you said, let me ask them, hey, can we go Christmas shopping together? What day are you going to get your groceries? Can I meet you there? So initiating that connection, and not allowing yourself to feel away because no one has reached out to you. And I think sometimes we fall into that lull as well.
Wonderful. We've had two great suggestions come through the Q&A. One thing that one of our participants does is they no longer exchange gifts with adults in their life, only giving those gifts to the kids and keeping the focus on the younger generation. And that goes well with another suggestion that said exchanging gifts after the holidays. That way you can buy the gifts once they go on sale and save a little extra money.
That's a good idea.
I thought my family was the only one who did. Those are great suggestions. And I've even had friends who said their families stopped exchanging on Christmas and said you get gifts for your birthday, because that kind of helps you spread things out. Instead of having to buy 7 gifts on Christmas, you're going to get a gift from me on your birthday. So I can kind of do it as the year goes along. Those are great suggestions.
Wonderful.
And having attended this session, hopefully you all can take some of these things back to your families that can help maybe modify some of the traditions that you have and take the pressure and the stress off of family members who are also feeling holiday stress but didn't get a chance to come and get these good tidbits.
Absolutely. At this time, we are caught up on our Q&A. Thank you to our participants for such great suggestions and questions.
You can go to the next slide. We wanted to end with some positive affirmations. So if you're unable to see the screen, I'll read them to you. But our challenge to you is to take one or more of these affirmations and tuck it inside your heart and make sure that you're reminding yourself of this as the season goes on. The first one says, I am worth taking care of myself each day. So as the holidays come and that snowball tries to build, remind yourself, I'm worth taking care of myself. And if you need to take a break, if you need to say no, if you need to step back, if you cannot buy something, it's okay because you're taking care of yourself. The next one says, only I am in control of my life. So we control how much money we spend. We control, how much of the noise of the hustle and bustle that we allow. So remind yourself that you're in control of your life and what comes in and out. My yes means yes, and my no means no. And that's a hard one. Someone said in our staff meeting this morning that no is a complete sentence. If you're unable to do it, what'd you tell me the other day, Dr. Love? When you got a request, I loved how you phrased it.
Yes, I said I do not have the capacity to do that by X date.
I don't. So putting those boundaries in place and sticking to them. When you say yes, absolutely, I can do it. But if there needs to be a no, your yes means yes and your no means no. And finally, my plate is full of people and things I'm blessed to have in my life. So that's kind of an extension of the gratitude. So we have a full plate. There's a lot going on, but also on that plate are things and people that you're blessed to have. So don't get so caught up in what we don't have and maybe who's not here and what we can't do that we don't take some time to focus on what we still have in front of us. And this slide is just a couple of resources. The first is a link to Psychology Today. So if you do feel like after everything we've said that you need to talk to someone, a therapist, and there's nothing wrong with having a therapist. In 2024, I hope that everyone has internalized that it's okay to need to talk to somebody. And so Psychology Today, you can look up Charlotte, and they will give you a list of all of the therapists who are registered through Psychology Today in Charlotte. You can sort the list by what insurance you have. If you want a male therapist or a female therapist or someone who speaks Spanish, or if you want an African-American therapist or an area of town, this is a great resource for you to find some additional support if you need it during the holidays. And then the second website is Mental Health of America and the Charlotte location. And there are lots of programs that Mental Health of America here in Charlotte have. They offer counseling. I believe it's free of charge. They have family programs that will help support your families. So that might be a great place for you to turn and look as well if you need resources. And then the next slide. These are a list of CMS partner agencies. So Dr. Love is the manager of our school-based mental health program, and that program has the district to partner with 15 community agencies that go into our schools and provide mental health counseling to our students with parent consent and insurance is billed. But we know that these agencies all have phenomenal therapists. So any of these agencies, they work with CMS, and that might be a place for you to look as well for individual and or family counseling if that's something that you find that you need.
And we do want to hear from you as our families and community. If you could please provide feedback on today's session, if there's additional sessions that you would love to hear from in the future, or any other ways in which the Family and Community Engagement Department can support you through Family Academy, please provide us feedback so that we can best accommodate those needs. We have that link within the Q&A for you.
And then the last slide is just contact information for Dr. Love and I. If you have any other questions, any ways that we can help support you or your students, we would love to do that. You can reach out to us via email.